Hi, welcome to Season 3, Episode 2 of the Grand Plans podcast. I'm Susanna Barton, founder of the Grand Plans online community and author of the book Grand Plans, and I'm excited that you can join us today. As I explained in the last episode, this season's podcast is a little different. We are basing all of the podcasts, or at least the first 5, on a workshop that has been ongoing. We started up in mid-January and we'll wrap up in mid-March. And we are addressing 4 steps of the Grand Plans 20 steps during each workshop. And today we will be looking at steps 5, 6, 7, and 8. So I'm so glad you're with us to join in on the conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. All right, here we are, day 2 of the Grand Plans workshop. And we are looking today at steps 5, 6, 7, and 8. So we're just going to jump right in and look at step number 5, which is to write your prescription for health, hope, and hospital issues and consider your medical thresholds. And basically this is talking about being prepared medically, both with your documents and with your healthcare planning, and also with you, when I say medical thresholds, just thinking, how far am I willing to go with this? How far do I want to get in and have every measure taken to save my life? So that's kind of what we're talking about. And I think we'll maybe start by looking at reasons it's important to think through some of these issues ahead of time. As an example, my father, when he was in the hospital unexpectedly, he had gotten all of his records together, and he was very well prepared legally. But the piece missing was the talking about it with the rest of us. So some of it we weren't right in sync, and there was a lot of gray area. And then just in general, the more I think about getting older, I don't want to be kept alive unnecessarily. And, this has made me think through some of those issues. Have y'all given the hospital and healthcare and medical part of this discussion much thought and had any issues? If you want, here, grab that one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll pass that one around. There you go.
Well, yes. Lots of thought on this.
Yes.
Both of my parents have passed on, of course, but I think it is so important not only that we get our wishes in writing, and on the proper color form, as you had mentioned last time, the yellow DNR for Florida.
Yes, and I feel like we're overlapping a little bit with our last discussion, which was about getting prepared legally and financially, but yes.
Yes, and I would say that it's also very important to talk to your children about these things, not just for yourself, but for what their wishes are. From personal experience, my brother was injured at age 30. And although there were conversations between my brother and my mother, none of us were privy to that. And it would be very helpful if, as a young adult, he had the foresight to put his wishes in writing,
Right.
so that they could be honored.
Yeah, I know. Good conversation is
Yes.
a big piece of every equation, I think.
It is, and we've had those conversations to a certain extent because my children have grown up with my brother being disabled, and they know he was injured in a car accident, and they know all the struggles that our family has gone through and that he has gone through.
Yeah.
And so that has really informed them.
Yeah. Have any of y'all been in a situation where you have gotten to the hospital and the pieces are not put together? You don't have the right documents. You get there and you have the wrong color paper. You didn't sign this. You know, all the normal things that most people get to the hospital and realize they need. Sorry.
When my dad got sick, he had congestive heart failure, and he was essentially dying. And I knew that. Of course, my mother didn't want to accept that. And my brothers were both out of state. One brother, my older brother, did not want, he wanted us to do everything possible. And my younger brother did not, understanding what we would be left with.
So everyone was on working off a different.
Yes. So
plan.
I am a nurse by profession, so I know, I have a very good idea of what his life would have been like. And he probably would not have lasted long anyway. His heart was literally failing. But thankfully, my brother and I, the year before he got sick, took my parents to the attorney and had the DNR signed.
Oh, good.
The last will and testament, and there's a legal one for
Durable power of attorney.
Yeah, we did that as
Durable
well.
medical power of attorney.
Yes, we did that as well too. So it was already documented. So when my older brother pushed and pushed, it was like this was Dad's wishes. He did not want any extraordinary means. He knew he was nearing the end, and
Right.
so we had that reinforcement to. None of us want to face that, and it was awful going through. And when the physician came in and had him sign the DNR, that was awful too. You know, explaining to him that these were the last hours of his life, and my mother hysterical in the corner. But it was the most humane thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
He had a very peaceful, comfortable passing with myself, my two daughters, and my mother there.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's beautiful, and that it was allowed to happen without a lot of discourse because of the paperwork.
And I phoned everyone. He got to say his goodbyes. They got to
wow.
say their goodbyes. You know, some people don't have that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
But having the paperwork in hand gave us that opportunity for us to just reinforce to my one brother, because nobody wants to see your parent go. But that gave us an opportunity to say this was Dad's wishes.
Yeah.
I mean, if we just said he had said that, he would have pushed harder.
Right.
But he really couldn't have done anything because he was too far away. But yeah, so that was just my experience, and I want to do the same thing. You know, I have talked, in fact, doing my homework with my children, and they're asking me what I'm doing, and I said I'm doing my homework.
Oh. Hey, there was no homework, but just to talk about it. Yeah.
But I took Beth's advice, and I went to Home Depot, and Office Depot, got a portable file.
Oh, great.
And I'm going to name it a gift box. I'm going to put a bow on it.
What a treat for somebody.
Yeah, I'm going to, and the reason I'm doing that as opposed to a binder is, I think for me, in my organizational mind, if I could just go to the file that said vehicles, as opposed to going through the book, scrolling through all the pages, if I could just go.
The 3-hole punch.
Yes. That was just in my mind what I thought I would do. And they're like, what are you doing that for?
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's a present for you. I'm doing this all for you.
I said, this is going to be a gift from Dad and I to you.
Yeah, it
And I
is a
said,
gift.
they both have witnessed the last year with the last 3 years, trying to prep my parents for this time that they refused to accept. But yeah, so they know that inevitably everybody's going to have.
Do they understand now why the prep? I mean, we joke about the gift and but do they have a
I
sense
think
of
so.
why
And I
it's
think
important?
they appreciate the fact that I'm planning for them.
Well, they've seen all the struggles and all the mess that you inherited.
Yes, and they've seen the physical toll it's taken on me emotionally. You know, the weight loss that I've had, and just you know, in fact, my mother has decided to move again, so
Oh, Lord.
yeah, it's bringing up everything. I mean, she hasn't even been in this apartment a year, and I have to repack everything.
Oh, did she make the decision?
Well,
Okay.
Wow.
you know, and figuring out where everything goes, and
Tell me. We'll be there.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
need your support.
yes.
Another thing along those lines, you've got the gift box going on, which is awesome. And along the lines of the hospital or having your medical documents in one place, David and I were talking last week about how important it is to have those have a go bag, you know, a grab bag, so that if whether it's your parent or your brother or someone, just so that you've got all your documents in one place and all you have to do is grab them, to have them with you when you are there at the hospital.
Right.
And I think that's a really good
I
idea.
think Nadine's system works because all she has to do is open the
Yeah.
top and grab the right file.
Yes.
Or just pick up the whole file folder to pick the whole thing. And the thing.
That's,
Yeah.
nah. Yep. Nope.
So, one of my challenges has been because my children were a little bit younger, and none of the grandparents were here in town. They did, and they were in middle school, high school. They had their own little lives going on. Unlike Nadine's family, they didn't really witness the stress, and also, I think I was doing a little bit of the protective mom thing. And also because I didn't want to mar their relationship with their grandparent because I was so aggravated
Right.
with the grandparents. So sometimes when I bring up things, they're like, oh, that's so morbid. But trying to, really kind of force a discussion. I think they're real slippery slope. When I read the book about being mortal, and Nadine, I may not say the term correctly, so correct me, but it's like when you're in perpetual critical care. And my oldest worked in the cardiac unit as a nursing aide up in Statesboro and saw this a lot. You're in a nursing home, you get sick, you go to the hospital for 2 weeks, they get you put back together. You're not necessarily going to die per se, but you're not well. You go back to the nursing home and you just keep going back and forth and back and forth, and nothing's really ever bad enough that it necessarily is going to kill you. But it's that yo-yo effect, and that's the part of life I think would be just so miserable, to be the human in that, and also to be the family around that human. So that's the piece I would really, and maybe it could be a friend's discussion or something, but how do you manage that stage of about saying, oh, yes, I'm sick, but I'm just going to decline care? Is that what you end up having to do? Because I would say most of the patients, when he and I talked about it, some were not like they had a heart attack, so they rushed him to the hospital, but it was more like they're not breathing really well.
Some very gray.
That's that really gray area that to me is that really slippery slope of not being well.
Yes.
And you can spend a long time
And a lot of money.
and a lot of money and a lot of emotion for the caregivers in that. And that's the part I really want to skip.
Yeah. No, but how do we mitigate that? I don't know if there's a good plan. Hi, come on in. Here, maybe pull up a chair, or you can sit right there. Yes.
Looks like you're recording.
We are recording. We're just oh no.
Welcome.
We're
Glad to have
talking
more friends here.
yes. We're talking about the healthcare and medical portion. Step number 4,
Okay.
looking at how we 5. We already did 4, about how we can address some of those issues, hospital related.
Yes. Yes, we
Yes.
have all kinds of goodies.
Yes. So, welcome.
Thank you.
We're
Hi, I'm Lisa. Hi, Lisa.
and we're just going to keep our last names out of the conversation since we're recording this. Not that anyone cares or is going to hear it, but anyway.
I presume this part will be edited out. Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. So anyway, we're talking about that time when someone's an elderly loved one is kind of yo-yoing back and forth between with health concerns that aren't absolutely critical but aren't great either, and there's a lot of back and forth, and kind of where do you draw the line in your own thinking as you look ahead to plan for less yo-yoing and more, I don't know, but it's kind of morbid because it is kind of thinking about where you draw the line for yourself and your health care and how that impacts your family.
Well, yeah.
So.
And I think also for people who have family in medicine or who are in the medical field, that looks a whole lot different than someone who may not. I am a child of a doctor, a sister of a doctor, and a wife of a doctor. And so their knowledge informs me a whole lot too. And also having lived with parents who were terminally ill and a brother who's disabled. And so I think I am a lot less willing, or I know I'm unwilling to do extreme measures. Yeah. I am not willing to sacrifice the quality of my life for the quantity.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's the discussion people need to have.
Grab when you want to. Sorry, I know that's really awkward, but here we are.
So that's the discussion that families need to have. They have to make a decision. It's ultimately up to the, whoever is ill. But you need to have a serious discussion as, do you want to keep bouncing back and forth to the hospital and continue to decline? Or would you just prefer to do something peaceful and quiet and easy? Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's what we all want. There were two things. There was a podcast I was listening to that talked about a woman who had told her husband for years that she did not want any extreme measures. She did not want to, if there was crisis, she did not want to be kept alive. She wanted to be let go. And when the crisis hit, and I can't remember what her affliction was, he was, ready. And she said, no, I want to be, I changed my mind. And he's like, are you sure? Yes, and you should. But that's another gray area or thing. Like, how will I feel in that moment? When it's go time, I don't know. Second thing, there's all sorts of studies that are coming up now about how our age is. Your age is based on how old you feel, and then how old you actually are. And talking about keeping people alive longer, and we can do this, that, and the other to prolong life. And I don't know how I feel about that either. I feel like just knowing what the expense of getting older is, for one thing, I don't want that. I would prefer to keep it at a natural pace, like have a finish line in my mind, and that's going to be fine. At least
there were a couple of things I was going to touch on. One is, I think having medical people in your life does help. What made a difference for me with my father when before we made a hospice decision was there's a woman that is an acquaintance, and she's a little to the point, but that's really what I think I needed. And she's in the healthcare field, and she said, "Oh well, you're basically, this is the beginning of the end." And she was really pretty blunt about it. But I think having someone tell you that really helped, because at first I was kind of taken aback and shocked, but then it was like, that's really good to know. I didn't know if that's what we were looking at, and that's the perspective I need to have going into this. And she was absolutely right. And of course, every situation is different, but there were some parallels that she had seen in her own family. And then the other interesting thing, though, to preparation, my mom has been a longtime hospice volunteer, so she really had good training and is very practical and mindful about all of that. But when the decision did come to make that decision for my dad, it was still hard, and he needed to hear it from his longtime doctor. And the doctor was, because that was the guy who kind of like, if he says we're done, then we're done, and the doctor was away for a few days. So we were kind of in this weird limbo thinking, yeah, this is probably what we're going to do. But when when the doctor said, yeah, I think this is it, and, you don't need to try anymore, that kind of gave him permission.
Yeah. And I think it's good when the doctor can give you a black and white picture. In my experience, when my dad was at the end stages, his lungs were completely full. Everyone said that there's not really a chance, but no one said there's no chance he's going to. So you kind of wish sometimes the doctors would be like, nope, there's no way. Like he's gonna. So when my brother and I had to make some decisions, it was like, oh, I wish it was a doctor would say, yes, there's right. And I guess there always is, but
Well, I think that this is sort of where the Hallmark movies sort of do us a disservice, because that's the person who wakes up and go ski or something like that. But also I think another challenge is with some of the shifts in medical care. Not everyone has a long-time medical doctor. Like in my father's case, I had actually fired his physician that my mother didn't like, Sandra didn't like, I didn't like. And when I had the chance, I fired him because
Did your dad like him?
My dad liked him. That's the only reason why my dad went to see him, but he was really incompetent. And so what I had found for my dad, which was great, was a physician assistant, but a physician assistant didn't necessarily have hospital privileges. So, being able to have someone, I have found in my experience, it's very limited of necessarily these days of having a medical profession that has a long time relationship with a person.
yeah.
That can really be that person, and the reluctance to say,
I guess
Yeah,
that's our
that's-
goal. What we need is to develop those relationships with the
People who are
cardiologist.
younger than we are.
Yes,
Who are
that.
going to retire.
Yes, find the young ones.
we need 30-year-olds that we
Yes.
Yes, the babies.
No, and that's a great solution part to this discussion is, let's have some better relationships with doctors and make sure our kids know who they are, and that there can be some better and more consistent, frank discussions about that.
So, a quick question.
Yes.
So, should an elderly parent be admitted to the hospital? You're suggesting that we just take all that paperwork, and
I
who
think-
would we give it to?
Just make sure you have it so when someone asks for it.
The social worker.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of times it'll be if they've already been there, I think it's part of their patient profile or whatever, but it doesn't hurt to have everything just to give to someone. Like David is one power of attorney for his healthcare power of attorney for his father, but if, he may not be the one on the scene. So everyone's kind of ready to be shoving paperwork in someone's face it includes all of that. So, all right. Well,
And I was just going to chime in. I found with my experience, it didn't make any difference that my father had been in that hospital before.
Oh,
it was
yeah.
like, oh,
you're all new.
you're all new. We're all brand new discussion.
Necessarily- Even if they're on the same floor, they may not have the same products.
Yeah.
Yep.
But even as far as all that information,
Oh, yeah.
it was all like,
Well, and we talked about this a little bit last time about the DNRs. You can have one, but I was told by a hospice nurse that even if you have one, you have to do another one at the hospital because they don't know. Yeah, they don't know. So, yeah. So that's something to think of.
What happens?
Yeah.
What happens in the case that the person is not competent? Does the power of attorney sign that?
The medical power.
The medical power of attorney. Okay.
So I don't know if this is the same thing as some of what is being discussed here, but my mom is getting ready to move, and the book that she has for moving reminded her that, and she's in her 80s, that she should put documents, I forget what they call it, but it's like something file on the fridge, so that if you call 911 or anything, then all the papers are right there.
Yes, and I think it has to be a special. It's a different color, the one you have on the fridge. So
Oh my gosh, not the yellow.
I think there's something different about it. But yes, you're right. So when emergencies called to your home, they can look at that. They know that there's not, resuscitation that needs to happen. And I'm sorry, but resuscitation for an older person, the more I hear about it, it's just
Well, it's traumatic to their
awful,
bodies.
traumatic. I mean,
Broken ribs.
broken chest, all of that, and I don't want that.
Well, the same oldest one that was at the cardiac was on the crash team. So he was part of the team. Like if you coded, he was in there. And yes, ribs are being broken. It's a big mess. And it's hard on even if it was our age in our 50s and 60s, it's traumatic. Let alone if you're talking about someone who's 80 and has brittle bones.
So I have a positive story about that.
Oh, good.
Which, I think it was taken as, you could tell by the hospital staff that my family encountered. My dad coded about 3 or 4 months before he passed away, before he went on hospice care. And he wasn't out that long, but he fully coded and came back completely normal and no injuries whatsoever. And they just couldn't believe that he had his full faculties. And it was at least 4 or 5 minutes, but the people were talking about it in the elevator. Like they saw my mom the next day, like, oh, it was your husband who coded, and it's an amazing story. So it actually gave us more time with him, which was nice because it hadn't gotten to that point yet, and it wasn't that clear. So I'm sure that it is that might be a unique situation because they were all so happy about it, but it was a blessing for us.
Yeah, and that's probably why they make you do another DNR when you get to the hospital, just to make sure that your health is in a place where you can come back from it, like your dad did. Wow. All right. Well, let's move a little bit into a different area, and we've moving from healthcare and medical decisions and paperwork into thinking more about where you're going to live and how you're going to do it. So in this chapter, we're thinking about all the options that there are out there when it's time to move to a different place, how much they cost and what the services are, and just a general knowledge. So that my thinking around here is that it's a good idea to at least know what you're dealing with when it comes time to downsize or move out of your home. And good Lord, I'm ready to downsize stat. I'm ready to have a very small, very clean little apartment somewhere. I'd like to a view of the river. That is what I would like. But anyway, what in my experience, I've seen older people get to that point and have no idea what the options are and had not prepared financially for having that option either. So has anyone gotten to into a situation like that with a loved one or family or friend who needs to think?
Okay, here I am again.
Yeah.
So when my dad passed, my mom did not want to go back to the condominium. We had to figure out where she was going to go. I took her to a couple of assisted living places. She said, absolutely not. I'm not old.
I'm
like
not old.
These people.
Yes.
Mind you, she was, oh God, she's 85. So yeah, she was old. And she needed to be in there. So I did not know at that point that if you rent an apartment, they have to make it ADA compliant. So we rented an apartment in my daughter's apartment complex. She was 2 floors up from my daughter. And they put in the bathroom bar for the shower. They did the bar for the toilet. And it worked out really well until she decided to go see my brother. But so that was just I wish that was an option I had known about sooner. I would have moved my parents up here sooner if I had known I could put them in a place that was safe. That I was fearful they would both fall and get hurt in the bathroom.
In an apartment, just any old apartment, they have to make it ADA
Yes.
compliant for you as the renter?
Uh-huh.
I didn't know that either. That's really good stuff.
Now, does it matter the size of
the dwelling?
No, I mean, she was in a 1-bedroom.
But she was in an apartment complex like I do in a 4-unit building.
I don't know the yeah. I don't know the laws for the ADA. Yeah. But I think it's ideal. I mean, I think she was in a good spot. She was around young people. There was young people everywhere in the apartment, so she didn't feel like she was old.
Right. Yeah, that's a great idea. I love the thought of a condo or apartment building because in addition to those safety options that we're now learning about, you see people. You get to see people in the elevator or by the pool or outside. There's socialization opportunities that I think are important, and I wish more people would think about that, even if it's not a senior living facility, but an apartment. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I'm really blessed that my mom is doing this on her own, and that hardly ever happens that way. Mm-hmm. And she's been debating for a few years as a widow, when does she want to move? Does she want to move? She's in a 3,000 square foot condo. It's lovely. It's 2 floors. Eventually the second floor is going to be an issue, getting up and down. Mm-hmm. So she decided to move to a senior living area, which is really great. It's in, it's not here. So they don't have anything comparable here, but it's going to give her that sense of community. Mm-hmm. It will put her in a smaller apartment, less to worry about. She's struggling with doing the downsizing now. She said, I thought you were going to have to deal with this. Mm-hmm. So she's having to make a lot of those tough decisions, which is really actually doing us a huge favor. Yes, tremendous, yes. Right? But the other thing that was interesting, she's moving in next month, so we don't really know the end of the story, but I think it's interesting. They do a wellness check if you don't open your door by a certain time of the day, like 10:30 in the morning. So she said, I'll have to remember to open my door if I don't choose to go out. I don't need him to come do a wellness check. But she's in great shape. She just wanted to do it proactively. And I do think that the community it's fantastic. But it's still been incredibly hard, and it's been, it's weighed on her for years. What's the right timing? When is the right time? Maybe I should just stay here. And because my dad passed away when they were in the condo that they're in now, she feels like she's moving away from where she was with him. There's all this stuff attached, mm-hmm. But I think it's the right decision, but it also it's hard, and it's a little sad because mm-hmm. it seems like, I don't know. It seems like the ending, because she's not expecting to move from there.
Right.
How far away will she be from you?
Well, she's in Michigan. So yeah. Yeah. But I do have a sister there. And there's, some other family, but I think what really pushed her to that point was not wanting to have to take care of things in the house when something broke.
Yes.
That was a really big stress. Mm-hmm. And, and just, having to deal with these problems that come up, and the harder it gets harder, as you're getting older, and she's certainly glad that she's doing it now because moving just gets that much harder. So at almost 83, I think, it's physically and mentally really demanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of these conversations start very early. You have to think, well, how am I financially planning for this?
She's been planning for years.
Yeah.
And this place is not inexpensive. Yeah. So,
none of it is.
And then she felt guilty because she didn't want to cut into what might be our inheritance by spending it. And mm-hmm. we had to keep saying, it's okay. You really should do what's best for you,
That's why.
But she's trying to leave this good nest egg. And it's just a lot. Yeah. All the things that you say, a lot to consider.
And I think there are so many options. But again, it's like you almost want to put a spreadsheet together. And I hope one day to do that very thing, just to look at, okay, here's this place. This is the level of service, and this is how much it costs. And, what am I going to need to do now? What are my kids not going to get from their inheritance so that I can live comfortably and not impose? I just don't want to ever be that person who is, calling up and having needs, and I want my kids to come visit me, not
Might have to
Yeah.
pay for your groceries.
Yes, right. Right. Yeah. Okay. What was the other thing I was thinking on? So, I know. With some of these things, I don't know if y'all have had experience with navigating some of the Medicaid programs and there is some science and strategy to finding a place for your loved one early while they still have a little cash in they have a little nest egg, and running it down until Medicaid then picks up the tab.
I think that all states have overarching rules from the federal government, but they also have state rules. And at least in Missouri, nursing home care is only in a semi-private room. So you
That's
have a
true.
roommate
Yeah.
and you have...
It's not perfect.
It's not perfect. Yeah. And so there is that to consider.
Yes.
And one of the things that Step 5 talks about is the costs. And it is crazy expensive,
Crazy.
no matter what route you go, whether
That's
you
right.
go to a 55 Alive community,
Yeah.
and buy in, or whether you go to an assisted living, because
Right.
I'm sorry, someone gives you your pills and it's $20.
Yep.
No.
Yes, and if you're aging in place and you want to stay in your home and you've done all the bells and whistles with the ramps and the bars and all that, that's great. But you're setting yourself up for $30 an hour, 24
7
days,
care. Yes,
24/7,
and
which
we
is
have done that.
crazy. Yeah,
and
it's
we did it
expensive.
in an area where it wasn't $30 an hour, and we were still spending $200,000 a year.
Yeah, and that's fine if you can pay for it and that it works. But you just have to think, where else could I be spending that $200,000? Or you know what I mean? It's
Absolutely.
like, let's look at the numbers a little bit. And
Absolutely.
see, and just
And-
know if you're going to be in your home, then great, that's fine. But
Right.
here's what could happen.
Right. And I did have the initial discussion of, we live in a 2-story house. All the bedrooms are upstairs. We live in a historic district. Do you really want to go through the historic commission to build a downstairs bedroom and bathroom that changes the footprint of our house?
Yeah. Well,
I don't think so.
yep. Some challenges.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not to mention just the horrific expense and the headaches that go with renovations.
That's
It's that, that condo or 1,200 square foot rancher's looking really,
Yeah.
really good right
Yes.
now. Can you imagine, my dear? In the dumpster with the fire.
Yeah, the dumpster fire.
I'll light them for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a complicated equation, but I think just now, while we can think about it and process it and look out, it's good to talk about it and be aware of all the inputs so that there can be some planning and some forethought. So when it's not go time, then everyone's freaking out and not sure what to do.
So I struggled. My brother and I had approached my parents. I researched all the places here in Jacksonville. I found a great place, the Coves. What's the name of that place, Madeline? The
River Garden.
River Gardens, yes. And it was reasonably priced. But my parents, like you had mentioned last week, my dad said, well, if they're going to serve dinner and I can't go in my shorts, then I don't want to move there.
Oh,
They requested that people wear slacks. How hard is that?
yeah.
So my question is how do you present it to people who are resistant to making that change? Or even, I mean, your mom at least came to it on her own. I don't think my parents ever would have left.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the empathy conversation should have some mileage, but how that decision impacts others. But I think empathy is also an issue as we age. It shrinks somehow. And it's harder, that kind of thing, like, oh, you wouldn't want to do that to me, would you? Maybe doesn't hold as much water as you get older. So I don't.
It's our parents' generation. The step up or
Yep.
we don't. it's our parents' generation too. You know, they were the depression babies, the stiff upper lip. We're gonna muddle through. We don't need your help. Thank you very much. And how dare you ask?
Yeah, yes, pretty much.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm like, yes, you can drive me around. You can, if I start showing signs of dementia, put me in the ward and, wave through the window.
I mean, I guess the other, I would think hot button or things that would make someone go, would be the cost, analyzing the cost, because money talks, And then, two, if their friends are there, or if you know someone who's there, that's always a drawing point, oh, I didn't know so-and-so was there. That might be fun. I don't know. But I guess it's a hard conversation no matter what to encourage people to move through that process. But
well, and also now, even just thinking it for me is, and part of it, I think, the social life would be really fun. They have the field trips. You could have bingo or whatever. I like bingo.
yeah, wine and bingo. That sounds fun.
Trivia Pursuit, puzzles, what. But then again, it's that measure of that privacy, if it's your space and everything like that, of trying, in my mind, thinking out, what's could be the overriding factor, the winning factors of, do I stay, do I go kind of thing.
Maybe
And
you have
not
to do it as
even-
a marketing approach. Like when you're in marketing, what do you want to promote?
Well, I do think that, people want the choice to be by themselves, but I think that if you look at people in their 80s who live alone, they start to feel like the people on TV are their friends, and it's really unhealthy. They're very lonely, and a lot of them, most of their friends have died, so they don't even have people that are able to go out either. So they talk on the phone, but they don't really get a lot of time out and about or with others. And so I do think that the ability to live around other seniors really helps them be around people who are in a similar situation, and they don't necessarily want to, I think, make new friends. They just wish their other friends were here. But at the same time, I think that, it's a pretty lonely existence I think when you talk about, for sure, money talks, but I think the social part, it seems like it's underplayed, and when you go weeks on end, it can just start to get bad pretty quick.
Yeah. And my grandmother's friends toward the end of her life were J.R. Ewing and all the ladies from Falcon Crest.
It's usually the people by first name are like the HGTV or the anchors,
Harvey.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Oh gosh. Oh. Anyway. All right. Well,
But don't mess with Jeopardy.
oh,
It's
yeah.
all about Jeopardy.
No, Jeopardy. I like Jeopardy. All right. So there's a lot to unpack with that where to live. And I think that mainly requires us just to get the information, analyze it, see what we can do to yes, watch Jeopardy together, drink wine, eat cheese puffs, So let's get to the real nitty gritty. This is why we're all here, I'm pretty sure. All right, step number 7 is about minimizing the hell out of ourself and our stuff. And by this is the real one, the one that everyone's like, oh my God, yes. Amen. But by minimizing ourselves, that kind of gets to the empathy thing I was mentioning earlier. I feel like a lot of the older adults that I've met, and I've seen it in myself too, become a lot more focused on myself and not as open to others, and I think that's what we should all hope for. And you see that in a lot of religion and spiritual text is, you get out of your own head and open yourself up to others. So And that comes, I think, from volunteering more and looking for ways that you can make a difference in other people's lives. And so there's that part. But that's not exciting. That's just a lot of inner work that we all need to be doing. The real thing is we need to get rid of our shit. You know, we got to get rid of the stuff. And it's everybody.
Instead of taking all the other the generation above us, instead of taking all
Yes.
their stuff,
Yes.
and then maybe keeping it, maybe not.
Right. And so I'm sure we can all go around the table and share our stories, but and we'll do that. But in terms of defining the problem, I know I came into life with just everybody's stuff. My mom had passed away by the time I was married. My dad was living a different life. He was living in London. So, and then my grandmother had passed away, and grandfather, my other so it was like all this stuff was available. And silly little me at the time was like, oh, I can furnish my first home with all of this stuff and it'll be great. Well, I'm still trying to push it out. That and the Hummel figurines and all the things.
And there's no market for that.
No, there's no market for any of it. And I wish I could show you a spreadsheet, but we did, when my father passed away, he had a big, beautiful home in Holly Springs, Mississippi, a period home that he had,
It's gorgeous.
it's beautiful. And he had done it just perfectly. And, we did sell it furnished. There were some Teaster beds, that had to stay in there. But we did hire an auction company to come in and extract small pieces that they could sell abroad. Like apparently China is a big consumer of all the little knick-knacky things, decor pieces. Yeah, and they're
which is so ironic because they're probably the manufacturer
Yes.
of a lot of those knick-knacky pieces.
And they know. They went through all that. My dad had these big displays, chinoiserie, yes, and all the things, and they were very quick to know what was a fake and what was not. But anyway, so there was a market for some little things, but it's a pittance of what you might even think might be worth the time of an auction company coming to the house. And all the furniture, the big heavy brown furniture, they didn't want any of that. There was no market for it, although later someone, right. But that's fine. I mean, there can be a use for it, but it's not a value proposition. Unless the trend swings back around, which someone told me that some of that brown stuff was.
Somewhere that the brown stuff's supposed to be coming.
Yeah,
I don't believe it.
I don't believe it either.
Because I've got too much of it.
Yeah.
And I would just even add giving it away because I work for a nonprofit. But the problem is when our families move into housing, if it's a 2-story apartment building, 10 out of 10 times there's no elevator.
Mm-hmm.
That stuff weighs a ton.
And that heavy oak stuff weighs a ton. And it's often very large, and these apartments are very small.
Mm-hmm.
So even giving it away, there's not necessarily a market for it.
Well, I know, Nadine, you and I share a similar story, and maybe I said a little bit about this last time, but the home, I cleaned out a home for this elderly couple that was their daughter's home that they had just never touched and added to over the years. It's very sad. But just, I needed to sell the house to generate money for the 24/7 care that they were getting down in South Florida. And it was like, I got to go. I took 3 vacation days to do it. And it was like, I didn't have time to think about what was going where. And it just, I gave all of it away. And whoever would take it, I put it all in my car, take it to Goodwill, multiple trips, multiple days. I found a company that would come take the bigger stuff and the mattresses, which is no one wants a mattress at all. And again, there's no value with any of it. And at the end of the day, I was like, ugh, just want it gone. So we can have a cleaned out house that will be attractive to a buyer who will pay top dollar for it. So we can get lots of money for this big empty sack of money that just is not coming out of the bag anymore. Yeah. So anyway, no value, but we all are laden with stuff. Yeah.
A good friend from high school, her parents both died within a couple years. And I remember when I was back in my home state, she was there trying to clean her parents' house out. And I walked in and talked to her younger brother, and they refused to let me leave the house until I took something.
Just say yes, and then
I found the smallest, tiniest little pink florally bully thing, which is sitting in a closet at my house in Florida now. But when my mother passed, she had a collection of small ceramic dogs. She had printer's trays, like 5 or 6 of them, with many, 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 many small dogs and larger dogs stuck to the top. She used the clay stuff and stuck them in there so they wouldn't fall out.
oh gosh.
And I was the same way. Anyone who walked in, would you like a dog? You must
small
have a
dog.
dog. Have as many as you like. Would you like 14 or 12?
Yeah.
They don't bark and they don't.
And they don't bark and they don't poop
Actually
in
the
the
best
house.
kind of dog. I would have taken one of your dogs if you'd offered me one. I like those kind.
They're a lot cheaper than the real kind, too.
Yes. Yes. Better behaved too, I imagine.
Indeed.
Did anyone else have any horror stories of a purge?
Well, actually, you inspired me
Uh-oh.
because at one point, and I don't remember if it was on Grand Plans, but you were talking about how your father had that party closet.
Oh yeah.
And it was filled with the
Yes.
papers and the paper accruement for every holiday from
Yes.
New Year's to Groundhog's Day to Easter
Yeah.
to Watermelon Day
Yes.
to the Thanksgiving. And I don't have that, but it did inspire me to start, like moving stuff out. And I have it's a running joke between my middle and me because I have a running list of everything that I have shared on the Buy Nothing Facebook page.
I love that thing.
And, it's getting stuff to where people want it because they have to come and pick it up.
Right.
It's from the standpoint you don't have to load it in your car. Remember to stop at Goodwill to drop it off.
Yes.
And hope that they'll be able to
PPU,
sell.
baby. Porch pickup.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I just put it out on a bag with their name on it and it disappears. It's a great thing.
Yes.
I've even gotten rid of food stuff, where we tried one bottle of something, we didn't like it, so we could get the rest of it to go away.
Yeah.
So it's been,
That's
you were our
good.
inspiration.
Well, good. Get rid of it all.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And the really sad thing is, I can't really tell that much of a difference, but at least I've actually made a list because at least I can say I've given away, X number. Right. So it's that stuff that somebody won't have to fool with.
Right.
Yes. Beth and I both suffer from husbands who collect.
Oh, joy.
Yes, we have every cork from every wine bottle ever opened in the 34 years that we've been together.
Does cork burn pretty well? I'm
You know,
asking for a friend.
We'll find out in the 3rd or 4th dumpster that's on fire. But he is an aficionado of the mundane and the extraordinary. And so there are many collections. And I told him the other day, something that I had read in this chapter is if something comes in, something of equal value goes out.
Yes. Space-wise, too.
Yeah, space-wise. Space is a huge consideration. We have emptied out 2 storage units, which is huge. However,
No.
the contents went en masse to another facility.
Oh, boo, hiss.
Boo hiss is indeed the correct
Oh, gosh.
response to that. Yes. So
Yeah.
after decluttering and actually cleaning out my parents' home, I told him yesterday, You're traveling. You could get hit by a bus tomorrow. I could get hit by a bus on Wednesday. What happens to our children who have no clue how to go about anything?
That's a valid concern. Yep.
I have 2 boys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Say no more.
Well, actually, I would say maybe girls aren't always the best at it either. But
Yeah.
yeah. But actually, on one of the items on my list that I did, inspired by last week, went through and did my update for 2024 on my things you need to know.
Oh, great.
But one of them is an estate sale person that I trust and I know, and I have her contact number. So, though my middle one solution is he's just going to take everything to the curb.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Garage sales, they work well.
They do.
Yeah. So my solution from one of my coworkers, love Karen. She said when her mom passed, she was just gonna put a dumpster in the driveway and fill it. And I told my dad that before he passed. He goes, "You wouldn't do that." And when he passed, they lived in a condo, so essentially I had a dumpster. And every time I took something, I'm like, "Dad, I'm taking it all to the dumpster." And it was very cathartic to get rid of all of their crap
Yeah.
and goodwill.
Yep.
But, the dumpster was just so much easier. So that's always an option. Yeah, and feel good about it because nobody else wants it.
Well, I don't. Do y'all know Barbara Commander? She does staging, and she's really good about organizing things. But she was sharing the story about how she was helping stage a house and clean out the home of someone who had passed away, and there were all of these beautiful dishes stacked up, and the kids didn't want them. No one wanted them. The friends, no one. The dishes there, they sat, and they hired a junk company to come take it all away. And the dishes were about to go in, and the housekeeper, who had been very familiar with the dishes and who initially said she didn't want them either, said, I can't bear. I mean, the dishes were about to go into the dumpster and crash, burn, and that's what happens. Sadly, it's just all junk.
Yeah.
Yes, right. Yep. Yeah.
I've been going through it with the photos because
that's a
there's
big
something about a
one.
really old photo that you don't want, even if you've scanned it in, it's like, but this is the original. And, it feels like you should honor that. And
Yeah, so what did you
it doesn't
do?
take
It's
up a ton of
hard.
space. Well, I brought them. I still have to decide. This was
Yeah.
in the last week or so. But it took hours to go through bins and bins of photos. And, really, my mom kept saying, well, we should just throw all these away. But she needed to look at all of them and decide. And of course, it was the age of doubles. We had doubles.
Oh, yes,
We
right.
had so many. And there were a lot of grandchildren pictures. So I did keep a lot of the kids because then I don't have to give away all my pictures when they want some when they were younger. But I have to go through. I mean, it
That's a
didn't end
tough
up
job.
being, it seemed like a huge job, but it didn't end up being more than, like a thick dictionary kind of pile. But I still am like, the last thing I need is more stuff.
Yeah.
But I just, for now I took them and it was breaking her heart that she's one of 8 kids and nobody else cared about the old photos. Some of them have been put in a book, like a family book, but it just,
It's overwhelming. It's almost like you wish there was a fire.
She was
we're
saying
talking a lot
goodbye
about
and
fires.
She
here.
was saying sorry as she threw
Yeah.
the pictures away of people that she cared about. Like you said.
And one thing too is my parents were both one of 8. And so when their parents' stuff was divided, it was divided in a bunch of pieces. I was one of 4. And so there were fewer people and we didn't take a lot of stuff because all my brothers and I had all the stuff we needed and then more. Well, I have 2 kids. And we have much more stuff than, my children have already said, we don't want your stuff. No. We want that painting. I want that piece of furniture. That's it.
Right. Yeah. And they don't want the grandparents' stuff either. No.
and I haven't really run into it, and I think my kids don't really at the moment need it in furniture. But one of the things that happened to me is because my parents had pieces that had come from my grandparents. And at one point, I had asked for some bedroom furniture for one of my sons. My mother turned me down. Then after she died, my father was like, "Oh yes, you can have it." But one of the lessons I walked away from that, coupled with an older friend, when she and her husband moved into a condo, they gave their adult children the chance to grab any pieces they want, and they went to like Rooms to Go and got their dining room furniture instead of taking the antique furniture with them. So to let it go in your lifetime, when people, because at the point years later, when my dad was offering me some stuff, we had already furnished our house. So it was going to have to be either get rid of something else, or well, not storing wasn't an option. So it was either get rid of something else, or like hang it from the ceiling or dining room table or something like that. But for us to remember, when there is that opportunity to give it to someone who actually wants it,
Yes.
to give it, and that we're in a position we can go to a thrift store, a Ashley Furniture, or Room to Go. We don't have to necessarily have that top of the line mahogany shiny dining room table or anything. In fact, we would be better off spending money on the mattress than the table.
Yeah.
And let it go.
I see people all the time, friends find very nice furniture and these pieces, and I'm like, it's so pretty, but it's not ever gonna make anyone happy beyond where it is right this minute. And it's ungodly expensive. Now, I think the photos are a hard one. That may be in like a section of its own, because it takes some technology and time and dedication to the process. But I think it can, getting it even on your phone and taking pictures and downloading it and saving it somewhere, that's good. But it's the rest of it is just, there's no value. And I think the things that you want to keep either should have value, some kind of major value, be completely practical, or special in some way. It's like we have a table in our kitchen that was my great grandparents' wedding present from their parents, and it's just a prairie style kitchen table. It's very small. We have eaten around it every day. It's meaningful because it belonged to my great grandparents, and so we'll probably cart it around. For everything else, but the nasty big heavy wooden chairs that I had around my grandparents' dining room table that came from Woolworth, it was that big heavy, not even real wood kind of stuff. I looked at those chairs for the last time and I said, you're out. And I just put them in the car and took them to Goodwill. And then I watched to see how long it would take for them to be whisked away. And it was weeks. Like, I kept going there, and there are those they have big red cushions on them, and they were heavy. No one wants it, So I think we just need to apply some parameters to what we keep and be willing to give away. Yeah. So, all right. Now, the last topic we'll dive into tonight is about our furry friends, our four-legged and winged and whatever reptilian friends. So the reason I put this on the list of musts is I do feel like, and that's been a question people have asked me. I don't know if that's really a core thing, like a concrete step to take. But I think it is, because pets are like people, and you can't just give them away. You can't just put them on what is that?
Well, you can, but
giveaway Miramar or that buy nothing page. They will not accept pets, I don't think. But anyway, and there may not be much more discussion other than it should be a discussion point, when we're going into, our second half, no matter when it is, just to have a game plan about, well, if something happens to me, what's going to happen with this guy right here? It came up for me when I was managing the care for this older couple in South Florida. They had a huge dog, and they loved the dog. And as we were trying to make decisions for them, the dog was always the sticking point. No, they couldn't go to this home because they had the dog, and no, the dog is staying with us. In fact, they had actually moved into a nursing home or assisted living home, but the wife never came over because she didn't want to leave the dog at home. And then it got into litigation. It was a messy, one of those other crazy crisis things. So anyway, and the caregivers some caregivers wouldn't come because there was a big dog and he jumped up on stuff and he pooped in the house. And at some points it was like, we don't have enough money. Like we need to pay for your care. We can't take him to the vet. It was like these horrible decisions. So that's why I figured it was a good thing to talk about.
It's a very good thing to talk about simply because dogs live a long time, a lot of them, especially the little rat dogs.
Yes.
The little cur dogs, right. My parents got a dog when they were both in their 80s, and she was a West Highland Light Terrier. I'd had them growing up. They're wonderful little dogs, but not a great choice when you're in your 80s because they are so long-lived. And my mother had dementia after my dad died, and so she was feeding this dog all the wrong things. The dog had gastric distress all the time. It was pooping and peeing in the house. Of course, she needed to be groomed. That was expensive. She needed, her immunizations. She needed her preventatives. And that stuff was falling through the cracks because of, dementia. And so after my mom died, my brother stayed in their home with 24-hour care. And so the dog was also fed by the people who helped my brother, and they let her out. And I tried to coordinate from Florida for care for this dog in Missouri, making vets appointments and grooming appointments and so on. And finally, when we were getting ready to sell their home and make other arrangements for my brother's care when he went into a facility, we had to make arrangements for this dog. I had 3 dogs. One of my brothers had 3 dogs. The other brother had 2 dogs. And the dog could not go to the nursing home. And so none of the grandchildren wanted the dog because she pooped and peed in the house. So we ended up finally finding someone who cared for her. We got her straightened out with medicine and, with a regular schedule. She learned how to go potty outside. So it was a good thing, but it was a huge stressor for me trying to, to find help. And eventually my niece found her band director at her high school who they had lost a dog and the other dog was lonely. And so she is now a member of that family and is doing great. But it's a huge issue. I have 3 dogs right now. When they go to their reward, I'm done. Yeah. It'll be less expensive. My house won't have dog hair all over it. I'll be able to travel without worrying about putting them in the kennel for, weeks on end or whatever it is. And if I need my doggy fix, I can go volunteer at the Humane Society or with a pet rescue or, take a walk in the neighborhood because people always are walking their dogs. Mm-hmm. And one thing to consider if you get this wild hair and have to have a dog, adopt or a rescue, because there is always going to be a clause. If you cannot take care of your dog, you have to return it.
Interesting. And senior dogs.
Mm-hmm. And I wonder if fostering is an option as well.
And fostering is an option. I have it written down right here. If I absolutely have to do it, you can do a short-term foster.
Yeah.
And my take's a little different because I have 2 elderly friends that were living in the same condo. In fact, they were neighbors to each other. One of them had a little, was it a Maltese? A little dog. But because they were in a condo, she had to take the dog out a couple times a day for it to go potty, but also to walk it. And as a result, she met all these people in the elevator. You have kind of the same walking time when you're walking up and down the streets. It was forcing her to exercise. she was thinking about some other living creature, other self, and not doing the whole organ recital.
Wow.
Yes.
Yes, and I'm glad we're talking about that, because I think every study shows people live longer, better, happier when they have a pet.
So the other person had a cat, and I love cats. I am a cat person. I have 3 cats. But her cat was more of accessory than it was a pet.
I see. Yeah.
And to me, there's
kitty arm candy.
or like it sits over there in its little bed, and doesn't it look? But as far as like petting it, grooming it, caring for it, I am the woman who at once had one cat. We had a spreadsheet for all its medications. So I think the advantage can be whether you're a person, whether it's a cat or a dog or whatever little creature floats your boat, of having something to care for and think of other than yourself.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a really dangerous, slippery slope at any age, but particularly as we get older, and as going back to the socialization of that socialization, I think having a plan in place, like if something happens to me, who's going to step in to take care of Fluffy or Muffy? If I have to suddenly go to the hospital, so that's a gift to give your children, that someone is in place. Secondly, like as we're aging, either making that decision, I'm not going to replace, or maybe I'm going to replace with like a senior dog or senior cat.
I like that idea of a senior dog.
Because they don't need as much activity. Well, they don't need as much activity. You don't have to go through all the trauma of like puppy training and all of that. And those are the animals that are harder to place. So then you've given an animal a second chance for a nice life, while having something that you can engage with and think of something other than yourself.
Agreed.
To me, is one of the real gifts that a pet gives.
Yes.
Is the chance to move that focus outside ourselves.
Agreed. Yes. Yep, I think there are all sorts of good things about having a pet, and I wouldn't want anyone to think I'm an anti-pet person, but I just think that conversation needs to be pretty clear ahead of time. Did your mom is a hospice volunteer? Did she ever talk about programs that hospice offers to help people with their dog situation?
No, I'm not sure she has. I mean, they could, but
yeah, I think a hospice nurse friend said that they, can talk about that when patients are in hospice. That here's what we can do for your dog.
I do think the takeaway here seems to be planning for it. If you're going to get a dog later in life, you need to really have that plan. And I think the hospital is a great example. It's just one more thing to think about. And a lot of people, go in and out of the hospital a lot and spend more time in the hospital, and the finances of it as well.
Yes. It's not fair to the pet to, if you're gone for 10 days in the hospital, well, that's not good. I mean, that's horrible. Yeah. So a lot to think about. And I think we're barking up the right tree here. But anyway, unless anyone has anything more to add, we will conclude this evening's workshop discussion. Beth?
I think it's time to pause.
Oh my gosh. Beth, there's no bones about it. Yeah, I know. But thank y'all for sharing your stories. And we're going to be, I think the next one is in 2 weeks. There's a little bit of a break. So we'll get to the next 4 steps at that point. But thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you so much for being with us today in the second episode of Season 3 of Grand Plans. We look forward to meeting up again. The next workshop will be in a few weeks, so there may be a little lag time in between, but I look forward to talking about, let's see, plans, steps in the plans, 9, 10, 11, and 12. See you next time.